This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Hi, I'm the Enigma, and you're listening to the X-Cast.
Welcome back everyone to the X-Cast, The Truth is in Here. I'm your host for this special episode, Tony Black, and in this edition of the X-Cast, we're doing a little bit of promotion of one of the best X-Files fan experiences out there, if not the best. I'm going to put it out there, and I'm joined by two very special guests in Jim and Keilly, the owners of the X-Files Preservation Collection. Guys, welcome to the X-Cast.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you know what? I'd put money on you two being almost as famous as anyone in the show at this stage. Seriously.
Well, I don't know. I think the Coveney's got us.
Do you reckon? Yeah, okay. Maybe by a little distance, sure. Okay, I'll give you that. But you guys, for some years now, have been putting together the X-Files Preservation Collection, which has now blossomed into this amazing museum in New York State. That's right, isn't it?
Right.
I've got that right?
Yep.
Yeah. And, I'm super sad that I'm obviously British, and it's not easy for me to zip over to the States, but I swear I'm going to make sure that my wife agrees for us to go to New York State so I can visit this museum one day, because it's a fantastic project. And I thought it was a great opportunity with an exciting new event that's going to be on there very soon to come on and have a chat about it. So, guys, why don't you tell us the story for people who don't know about how this all came together?
The story of how this, Jim's been collecting. You want to just tell the story a bit?
Yeah, I just like any other fan, I've been collecting from the very get-go. When the pilot started, I don't know, I was around 22, 23. Of course, I was a horror fan, Kolchak the Night Stalker fan, and the show, it came on, and I was like, wow, this is a pretty good show, and it gave me the Kolchak vibe, and from then on, I was just like, wow, this is great. I originally thought it was going to be like one episode and done. So I just, I was hooked from the beginning, and it's snowballed from there.
So then he's out at the mall and he sees a binder.
Yeah. Towards the end of the first season, I was like, I was so into the show that my very first thing I ever bought was a complete set of the showcase trading cards.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah.
And that was because, merchandise back then, it was, there wasn't much, When I saw that, I was like, wow, I own a piece of the show, and just trading cards, but ever since then they released a TV guide. I had to buy 5. They released a cup. I had to buy 10. That's just the way it was. 20, a little over 29 years, and it's blossomed into this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we record, don't we, actually, on the 29th anniversary of the show.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's quite fitting, really. Yeah. It's amazing you were doing it right from that early on, Jim, really collecting this stuff.
And he started collecting before we met. So when we met, his passion for the show obviously drew me into it. And then I was like, I was encouraging him to network and, get more authentic things, and his first official screen use thing, and etc. And then it just, once he made his first connection and got his first piece that was actually used in production, it just steamrolled from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it materialized. It came in stages, commercial stuff. Then it was promotional stuff. That's kind of how it worked.
kind of like crew gifts, and then finally actually used in production, and from there.
So Kelly, I'm assuming you were into the X-Files from early on, right? Was that before you met Jim? Once you met Jim?
So before Jim, I was doing the whole single mom thing, and I like didn't have time for myself for anything, including TV. And then, you know, when I met Jim, he introduced me. I'm sure I'd seen the X-Files, and if I had a minute to watch TV, I would watch it, but I wasn't like a fan. And then he introduced me into it, and it grew from there.
And then the collecting began, really. What was it about doing that that was the driver? Because obviously so many other people celebrate things in different ways, don't they? Like I started this podcast, for instance. You know, you've got people who love going to the conventions and collecting the autographs, you know, all those kind of things. What was it about collecting all of these amazing props and mementos from the show for you guys that was the driver?
For me, collecting the stuff, watching the show and collecting the stuff, I don't know, it just put me in a different world, I was a lot younger, and I had a couple really small kids, and life was tough, and there was a lot of pressure and strain. But when I watched the show and collect the show, it made me feel good. I felt a part of the show. There was just so much passion, and the show kind of spoke to me, because it had the sci-fi, the horror, element to it, and I just got sucked into it. And then owning the show, part of the show, whether it was promotional stuff, commercial stuff, it made me feel really, really good, and I wanted more.
Yeah, I guess it snowballs, doesn't it? I guess once you start, you just need to keep going.
God, yes.
Yeah. So what was the first piece that was really special to you guys in terms of the collection, really?
The first piece for me, you had your commercial stuff, your promotional stuff, but the first production used piece that I ever got, this was, nothing to write home about. But when I got it, I was blown away. It was a production used battery for one of their cameras.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
It's a battery, but back then it was wow, this is absolutely amazing. I can't believe I own this.
Right. And that started all the networking and making connections. So, that's pretty important.
It was the most important battery in the history of the X-Files. I think we should put that out there. Yeah. So how did the networking begin then? Was that easy to do? Was it easy to make those connections to get more of these props? Did you just put yourselves out there and say, I'm looking to collect, I want to do, how did that happen?
Yeah, Kelly had some involvement in that, because I was trying to, keep the price down on a lot of stuff. Because, she would give me the look like, all right, you're spending too much money, And then, she's like, just, all right, you're going to do this, go out and, network, get yourself out there and everything. But then you really had to pay attention once you put yourself out there, that what you're looking for, people they'll sell you anything. They'll sell you anything, and it's used on a show. You got to be very, very careful.
Yeah, there's a lot of research you have to, and knowing people, and reputation is everything.
Yeah, research. Do your homework, because I cannot emphasize that enough. People will go out and buy something, and they say, "Oh, it's got a COA." Well, that doesn't mean it's real. Anybody with a printer at their house can make a COA. We've got a lot of stuff that don't have COAs, because you got to know the source of where you're getting it from.
Right. All the stuff from Chris Carter, none of it has a COA, but we know it's legit.
So just for anyone who doesn't know, what is a COA? Just
it's a certificate of authenticity.
Right. Yeah. I thought that was what it was. I was double checking the the term,
Yeah.
but yeah, because I think that is really important, isn't it? I suppose because I'm not a collector in that way, so I know much less about it than you guys. But is it easy to distinguish between if there isn't a COA? Is that something you just, for the most part, would you just not go near it? Would you? Are they easy to get? Is that part of it tricky in order to distinguish whether you've got something authentic or not?
You get the piece that you're inquiring about, that you're looking at, and you do your homework. First thing you do is whatever the piece is, whatever episode it's from, you go to the episode, you watch that episode. I don't care if it's either one time or 100 times. You have that remote in your hand. You use that remote and you pause it a lot, and there's a lot of times you got to blow it up and all that. You watch the episode because that will tell you a lot. A lot of people will make stuff that will look exactly like it.
Right.
That's where it falls back into who is
Right.
offering that piece to you.
Before you even buy the piece, you need to research who's selling and where did they get it, and trace it back as far as you can and verify things. So it's really good if you know the person they say they got it from. You can say, hey, did you sell this to so and so, because he's trying to sell it to me now and I want to verify. You can backtrack. So it's all about having enough connections to trace it back to the actual show.
It's like your detectives, like the amount of detail you have to do. Like that sounds really difficult to actually be able to track those. How easy is that to do? Really?
It's not easy.
It doesn't sound it.
Extremely hard. If, example, the original run episodes, seasons 1 through 9.
Yeah.
That it's very, very difficult. I mean, I could find a piece today and then purchase it, but then I could go 6 months and there's nothing. It's extremely, extremely hard.
Right.
To locate some of this stuff.
Would you say you're at a point now where you have a significant amount of this stuff already, given you have the museum and you've been doing this for years? Are there still holy grail objects out there?
Oh, absolutely. There's
have?
thousands of pieces out there. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot then.
Yeah, there's a lot. One thing there's not a lot of is from the original run, the original screen-worn wardrobe. There's not a lot of that around. If there is, it's really stored in private collectors, but some of it has been destroyed.
Yeah. That always makes us sad, when they would cut it up and put it on those cards and stuff.
They would cut swatches, and they would, cut the little, like the trading cards used to do. They would put a little piece of their clothing on there, and then resell it.
Part of what made us want to do this, to preserve these things, because they were just being destroyed. Either they're getting thrown away or they're getting cut up and sold so that whoever bought them can make the most money, or people are actually wearing them and going about their life. So we collect them and keep them preserved in their original state, and they're the history of the X-Files.
Right.
Yeah, which is why I think, obviously, you have the preservation collection. It's there in the name, and
exactly.
I think you've reached a point where you're probably the best. Certainly, from my perspective, you're the best known X-Files collectors out there, precisely because you are preserving this kind of thing. And I guess that's the impetus behind creating the museum, wasn't it? Eventually,
right.
Was there a point? Was that always the plan, or did you get to a point where you had so much stuff that you just decided, actually, this needs to go in an actual, a place?
No, not really. It really wasn't the original plan. A lot of fans were mentioning oh, you should I'd pay money to see that, or build it, and I'll see it. And Kelly was the one that kind of kept pushing me into that direction, and then I thought about it, and we discussed it more, and I'm like, yeah, this could work,
Right. And we tried display, like at Comic-Cons and stuff, displaying it, but like it's too big to take around. It's too much to take around the country, and like you want people to see it. So this is really the best option. Some of the pieces can't travel. Like we took that pinball machine all the way to Chicago, and I was having heart attacks. Like every bump you go over.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces that you can't transport. One, it's just too fragile, or the pieces are just too big. You can't. You would need.
Yeah, like that cryopod, the alien cryopod, that we could never display.
Right. You would need several 18-wheelers.
That's the one from Fight the Future, right? The big.
Yeah, that's
the one that Scully's in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the cryopods right there.
Yeah. Yeah, they're huge, aren't they? I saw that picture on your site. Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's amazing piece. So how easy or difficult was it to find an actual museum space to put all this in? Like, what was the process in getting to that point of finding the right spot for this?
It was difficult. It was very difficult because the specific needs that we need.
Right.
And upstate New York. We're like totally separate from New York City. It's we're totally different than New York City. It was difficult, and technically, the space that we're in,
we haven't found the perfect space yet.
This is kind of it's like a temporary home for this. We need a lot bigger space, and plus we have bigger plans for all this stuff. This is kind of like a stage 1.
Okay.
Of what we're doing.
Cool. I won't book my flight just yet then to to New York
There
State.
you go.
I'm gonna wait till you find the act. Yeah. So I mean, do you have any idea about that final step? Do you know where roughly you want to get to in terms of where this is going to be? Is it going to be in the same state? Is it going to be? Have you got that in your head, or will it depend a lot on how much more you end up gathering and that kind of thing?
Well, we're discussing that right now, where we want it to be, whether it's New York State or a different state. We're not sure yet. I know one thing, non-X-Files related, is we're tired of the winter.
Yeah.
In New York State. We know that.
It would be easy to sway us to move a little south from here.
Somewhere a little warmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a Brit, I can empathise with that. All we want to do is go somewhere warmer most of the year.
Yeah.
So no, I get that. Would you stay on the East Coast? Would you ever be able to take it over to California or to Vancouver? Would you ever put it in Vancouver? I know that's cold, but
Yeah.
We're probably going to stay on the East Coast side, but we definitely would love to visit the Vancouver area.
Yeah, definitely. I think the bottom line is we need to find the right property.
Right.
The right building.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. And in New York State and where we're located up here, it's kind of scarce, exactly what we need and the size we need.
Yeah, it's a little cost prohibitive to have the size we need up here.
Have you found there's been a lot of how in terms of visitors and in terms of interest around that area? Have you had people coming in from all over the country? How's that fared so far with this?
That is
it's amazing.
It's I can't emphasize this enough. It's kind of mind blowing.
Right.
Wow.
We'll
That's
get
great.
people, that's kind of close, New York State. They'll come from Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Boston. But then when I find out we're getting people from Texas and California and Indonesia.
Really? Wow.
And then the UK.
Yeah.
It's, I'm blown away by it.
Yeah, it is amazing. The spread, like from all over the world, but also like the age range. Like we tell the story on our site, on our Facebook page, about those 4 teenagers that like found the show just summer vacation. Let's watch something. They found it on Hulu and managed to convince their parents, who were not X-Files fans, to bring them all the way up to New York State to see this museum. It's an amazing story.
Those guys have the best parents. I think there's the point of that story more than anything else.
Exactly.
Who are willing to do that.
There's 2 points. They've got some amazing parents, and X-Files still has it. It still could draw the young kids in. I mean, it holds up.
I mean, I ask that question all the time. Matter of fact, yesterday I had 4 young adults come in, and I ask it all the time, and I'm blown away. They were like 18, and I'm amazed that they're 18, and the show came out in 92, 93. And I was like, "What do you think of the show?" And they're like, "Oh, it's awesome. We love it."
Amazing.
And then I ask them, I go, "How do you think the show holds up today? Because it was filmed in the 90s." And they turned around and said, "Oh, it holds up absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. It better than a lot of shows."
Mm.
And that all goes back to Chris Carter and all his crew and how they did everything.
Yeah.
The detail that they,
Right.
yeah.
They filmed basically every episode kind of like a movie,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so far ahead of their time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which you would see in the props, you gather, I imagine. In the things you're preserving, you'd see the detail and the kind of things that they wouldn't have done in so many other shows at that time, and that's a testament to it. Why this is still, it's still powerful for younger people.
The detail they put into these props continually blows my mind. I mean, something that's going to be on screen for like a millisecond is like so detailed down to the finest little detail. That, and now it was for the movie, but that alien cryopod, I mean, it's a prop, right? It's a set. It's going to be torn down. They built it with a metal beam in it. Like, it wasn't going anywhere by accident. I'm just like, you guys built these things to last, man.
Yeah.
And with so much detail. So much detail. We have a fetus prop that is so realistic that I convinced Jim it needs to go towards a lower shelf so it doesn't like completely shock anybody. Because to the little hairs on it, to the finest details, the vein lines.
Yeah, that.
And that was like on the screen for like less than a second. That was in a flashback.
Right. That was from a season 10 episode, and that goes to Bill Terazakis and his crew and his studio. The work that his crew and studio did was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, well, that's a neat way of bringing us to some of the collections then, because you have 2 particular collections, don't you? So you got the Bill Terazakis collection, is one of them as well. So what kind of things have you got in there for this collection?
For the Bill Terazakis collection, it's all
there's some props. There's props and there's molds.
Right.
It was really important that I was able to get the molds. I wanted the molds. Every mold that they were offering me, I didn't care. I was like, I want them all, because I did not want the molds
destroyed,
and I didn't really want the molds to be resold, because if they were resold, then it was going to get recasted.
Right.
And then you were going to see a million things out there, and I did not want that. I wanted Bill Terazakis, his stuff, to be preserved and for everybody to see. There's so much. I mean, Bill Terazakis and WCT Studio, excuse me. They did a lot of the stuff for the season 10 and season 11, but Bill did work on some of the previous run stuff.
Yeah. Some of his work is at home on the Hillbillies.
And he did a lot of the props and stuff for the I Want to Believe movie.
So it's amazing. I mean, he's a big part of the show. So we definitely wanted to have his work to show people.
Yeah, and it's even tinged with a bit of sadness, obviously, since he's passed away now as well. But
exactly.
But yeah, that's a great way of preserving his legacy, really, in that way, in terms of the show. And you've also got the Chris Carter collection as well, haven't you? Based on his own personal collection. Because I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that he opened the museum in the first instance, and you had that event, didn't you, where he came along?
He was at our grand opening and did the ribbon cutting for us.
Yeah, I saw many pictures of that, and it looked great. And so, did that happen? Did he offer to give you all that before the grand opening, or was it during your conversations with him? Did that come about? How did you get to have a lot of his personal collection of this stuff?
I think wasn't it Benjamin Van Allen?
Benjamin Van Allen. Yep.
Benjamin Van Allen.
Oh, yeah.
He reached
Friend
out
of
to
the
us.
show.
You know who he is.
Yeah.
He reached out to us and
On behalf of
Chris, and Chris, saw what we were doing, and he wanted to donate something. First things first, okay? Now, everybody loves, Mulder and Scully and, Skinner. They love all those guys. They're great. All of them are great. Me, personally, Chris Carter is God to me. He was the creator of the show. He created something that's very personal to me and helped me a lot in my life. I would say Chris Carter's like the George Lucas of Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
totally.
It's one of those things, the old little, you ever watch the movie Wayne's World?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah.
we're not worthy. That's kind of like how I felt,
Sure,
And then
yeah.
they said Chris wanted to donate something, and then we found out what he was donating was the mammalian corpse from the pilot episode.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
words can't describe,
Right.
Chris Carter. He's reaching out to you. That was just absolutely mind blowing for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's fantastic. So what?
That's
what?
Yeah, that's basically how it kind of like started, and then
And then I, months later, I opened my personal email, and there's an email from Chris Carter. I was actually at my job, and I, was sneaking a peek at my personal email on my phone. I had to get up and go outside and call Jim because I was shaking with excitement.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and then from then on, we've been in contact with him, and he donated some more items to us. And a big thing about why he donated to us is because of what we're doing, that we are preserving it, and he knew we would never sell it. He didn't want to just give it to somebody that was just going to resell it just to make money. He wanted it preserved. He wanted the fans to be able to see it because the show meant the world to him. It still does. You can tell that in the way we received what we did receive. It was all, well packed and cataloged, and there was a lot of love and attention to how that stuff was stored away.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that makes all the difference, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
We actually have three. I think it's a better description to say we actually have three collections. We have the Bill Terazakis collection, we have the Chris Carter collection, and then we have our main collection, which is the largest portion of this museum and what we have been acquiring for. Jim started it almost 30 years ago, right? So that's the main heart of the collection.
Right.
So what are some of your favorite pieces then from the broader collection then? If you had to pick one or two, what are the ones that immediately you would want to show a new person who comes in?
Me personally, that could change every hour. That could.
Then something I get excited to share with people when they come in here is different. So my favorite thing, one thing that means a lot to me is the burnt Chingadao, because it was the first thing we got that was iconic
Kind of
to
an
me.
iconic piece.
The minute you saw it, you knew what it was from, kind of thing. And that was mind blowing to me. But one of the things I love to show people is the amusement park presentation boards. Because, believe it or not, at one point they were planning to build an X-Files themed amusement park. And we have the actual presentation boards that they use. It's amazing. And the detail on those boards is they had one section of the amusement park was the host. They had one section that was the bee sanctuary. There's so much detail, and it would have been an amazing thing had it come to fruition. Originally, they weren't planning to build it in the U.S., but my fingers are crossed that someday something like that might happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is absolutely. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah.
And I don't know how. There's probably loads of people who have heard of it, because I tend to find that I'll be like, oh wow, I've not heard about that before with the X-Files, and then lots of people will go, oh yeah, well I've been knowing about that for years. So,
Well,
that's great.
Most people are pretty surprised when I tell them. So.
Right. Chris Carter had no knowledge of. He had no knowledge that was ever.
Yeah, when we showed those to him, he was blown away as well.
Well, I mean, that's even more remarkable that nobody told him they were going to make an X-Files theme park. Oh my god! I mean, yeah, wow! I can't even begin to imagine how amazing that would be. But yeah, so there's it's a treasure trove. Then is what you're saying. There's going to be things in this collection, that people will just be like, oh my god, wow!
And like the behind the scenes photos that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell people when they come in here, take your time. Yeah, you're gonna be blown away by the props and stuff like that. Go ahead and look at them, but go back around one more time and take your time and look at these photos because they're treasure on the wall. I mean, there's that
captures so much history of the show, and it captures a moment in time. The behind the scenes photos, whether it's Rob Bowman and David Duchovny goofing around. I mean, that it is a personal moment, or behind the scenes photos of them, making an episode, filming, going over a script. It's perplexing when you see it, that means a lot, stuff like that.
And there's a lot where you can see like how you can sort of start to get an idea of how these things were made or how things were made to happen. And that's always an interesting, like one of my favorite parts of this collection is seeing how they did things or how they film stuff. That's why, like, when we talk to people, when we interview people, I like to hear, how did you film this up? How did you make this smoke come out when you were, doing this scene? Or that stuff is very intriguing to me.
Yeah. And obviously you've got your YouTube channel. You've done quite a lot of interviews on there with various people, Rob Bowman and Karen Conable and loads of people, as well as obviously Chris Carter's on there as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great extra thing in terms of it's not just about what you've collected, it's also the connections you've made in these interviews and these people, totally involved in the show. That's brilliant.
Yeah, the people. It's all about the people from the show. Whether it's Rob Bowman or if it's Mike from catering
or Jeff Redknapp, special effects,
because it took an entire crew to make this phenomenal show work.
Yep. And one thing we hear over and over again is how tight the crew was. Like everybody was so tight together, loyal, friend, all got along well. Always good. I've never heard any bad stories from on the set.
Right.
That's great. Yeah, because that's so rare in lots of other shows and movies. There's horror stories, so that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, that leads us nicely into talking about the event that's coming up in a few weeks, around a month as we record, about a couple of weeks as you listen, listeners. And this is the X-Files Fan Fest 2022, which is happening linked up with the X-Files Fan Retrospective. Tell us about this. This is happening on October the 7th and the 8th of this year.
We're very excited.
Yeah. Tell us all about it.
Right. This is like the very first, like fan event, and there's, we are definitely going to be hosting more in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
This is the first, one that we're going to get lifted off the ground, and it's going to be an amazing event. We've got 3 fantastic, guests from the show that are going to be on there.
Right. 3 official. I kind of think we have 5 guests coming, but because one of the guests that we have coming is Jenny Lynn Hutchison, who played Polly from the episode Chinga. Her mother is also coming, and her mother is the one, so Jenny was a little girl, but her mother's got a ton of behind the scenes stories to share with us. She's the one that interacted with all the people on behalf of her daughter. So she's got a lot of stories. And Jenny's bringing a little friend with her, too, because, as she says in her little promo video, Polly isn't Polly without her little dolly.
Oh, my God.
So she has the original screen-used Chinga doll that was gifted to her from Tim Mayners. And she is bringing that along with her for the fans to see.
I would be when I hear I want to play, I would be scared out of my wits. At that point, I'd be like, oh my god,
Yeah,
that is fantastic.
Awesome.
And
Yeah,
that's a first. That's a first, right? I don't.
Oh
think
yeah, she's been very private. So, you know, we had the first interview with her, and now this is her very first fan event. So we're excited to be hosting her.
It's amazing. Yeah. So what else is part of the event on those 2 days?
Well, we have our guest of honor, Nick Lee,
Hey,
who everybody knows, as we call him, Rat Boy.
Rat Boy,
right?
Yeah.
And so he's our guest of honor. So Friday night we have a special add-on where his diehard fans, for a small group of diehard fans, get to come spend 2 hours at the museum with him. Mm. And that's going to be awesome. Obviously, there'll be autographs and selfies, but then he's going to, you know, spend the 2 hours with them, telling them stories, looking at the collection together.
Amazing.
It's very limited on the 7th, that Friday. It's very limited, so he's going to be able to spend more time with very limited select of fans, you know, and they'll have a better experience.
That's for the diehard Nicolay fans.
Yeah. There's plenty of those guys out there.
Absolutely.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. He was definitely one of Jim's favorite characters.
Yeah, because the one thing about Nicolay, but his character Alex Krychek, okay? Everybody loves to hate the guy. I love the guy. And you've got your main core of X-File X-File cast people. You got your, Mulder, your Scully. You've got your Skinner and the gunman. If you stop and think about it, Alex Krychek has been on the X-Files for such a long period of time. He wasn't a complete regular all the time, but he was on the show from, last season, was it 2? And then it went all the way down. He was here.
Yeah, he's kind of like part of the main group.
And when you stop and think about it, Alex Krychek, I don't think his character don't get enough love. He's kind of like, he's a pivotal cast member of, the show, and he doesn't really get recognized enough as kind of a main cast guy, and I want to change that a little bit.
Well, Death couldn't even stop Krychek showing up, as the truth showed us.
Right.
So he's pretty undefeatable at the end of the day. Exactly. No, I know he's great. He's absolutely great. I hope one day we can get Nick Lee on the X-Cast because he's fantastic, and Krychek's a brilliant character. So no, you've got it's. I suppose the way when I've looked at this, the way I saw it is a version of the X-Files conventions that happened a couple of years ago before the pandemic that they did in Chicago, being hosted in and that's fantastic. That you've got that, you've been able to turn the museum not just into this space for these brilliant collections, but you can host something like this to pull in X-Files fans from presumably all over the States, maybe even further afield. So yeah, it sounds wonderful. It's wonderful that it's happening.
And then we also have the Enigma.
Oh, yeah.
Is from episode Humbug, right? He played the Conundrum. And he's, as a special treat for our VIP ticket holders, he will be performing his sideshow act at the VIP after party.
Amazing.
Which I'm excited about.
Mm.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy. Really, really sweet, nice guy.
Right.
Yeah, loads of people I've heard say that over time. Yeah, actually, that he was really good. Yeah, he's a really
lot of fun.
Guy. Yeah, that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So where can people get tickets for this then? Where's the best place for them to go? If they still want to go in the next couple of weeks and grab some tickets, where do they go?
They're just going to go right up to our website, xfilespreservation.com, xfilespreservationcollection.com, and then on our event page, they can get the tickets right from there. And they can find us on all social media just by looking for X-Files Museum.
Yep. Amazing. And the YouTube channel you've got as well? Where do they find, is it X-Files Museum again, right?
Yep, everything's nice and easy for everyone.
Yeah, nice and easily done. And I know that they're involved in the event, so you can find the X-Files fan retrospective at the X-Files 25 on Twitter as well, and they're fantastic too. So that's brilliant. And yeah, that's fantastic that all of this is happening and this brilliant museum is out there. And I'm just jealous I can't get there and see it sooner. Hopefully one day. It is genuinely I wouldn't say bucket list, because that's makes it sound I haven't got long left, but yeah. a future aspiration to
definitely you've got to see it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think we need to get a little bit of XCast Brits trip over there at some point and do it. But
absolutely.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Jim and Kelly, for coming on and talking about this amazing journey you've been on, that you're still on, and this wonderful, wonderful place that you've created and are still creating, and the eventual home will be there eventually that you're gonna store all this wonderful stuff. So it's been brilliant to chat with you both about it, and I just hope people get involved, come and visit, and this grows from strength to strength. So thank you both.
Absolutely, thank you. Thanks for having us.
No, it's wonderful. So please check out X-Files Museum on all social media platforms, and go and seek out the Preservation Collection website, which is brilliant in itself because it's got lots of pictures of what you can expect to find there, and it's a wonderful taster. It's a great website, so go and look it up, everybody, and if you haven't already. As always, we will be back with more X-Files content coming up very soon, finishing off season 8, going into special episodes throughout the autumn. And then thinking ahead to season 9 of the X-Files next year, which is going to be an interesting, fun experience. So do check us out, as always, at the X_cast on Twitter, the Xcast on Facebook as well, and the Xcast on Instagram. And please give us a follow if you haven't. But thanks for listening. Thanks again, Jim and Kelly, for coming on the show. And
thanks.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been wonderful. And we'll see you next time, guys. But remember, as always, trust no one.
100 years since Nosferatu first terrified audiences on the big screen.
30 years since Francis Ford Coppola gave us Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And 10 years since Dark Shadows of Johnny Depp.
Vampire Videos is a podcast taking a look at this iconic blood-sucking monster on film and television.
I'm Dan Owen.
And I'm Hugh McStay.
And we're here to guide you through a century of vampirism on film. From Hollywood's golden age with Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula,
to the more lurid hammer horrors of the 60s and 70s starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Through to the 80s boom in vampires, which brought these creatures of the night into the modern age.
And everything this century's had to offer us, from foreign and independent films, spoof comedies, and even teenage love stories. Yes, I'm talking about Twilight.
We aim to cover it all, one bite at a time.
So join us on a voyage into the depths of vampire cinema, old and new, with weekly guests offering their own insights and expertise. And why not follow us on Twitter at VampVideos?
A proud part of the We Made This podcast network. Subscribe now to Vampire Videos, and thanks for listening.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair, and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening, and keep watching the skies.